Thus, I believe that this shared interest should compel Europe at some point to act as a unified political entity capable of safeguarding its own interests, even if it means deploying its military forces. The withdrawal from the Sahel was a bitter pill to swallow for all those who were invested.
France is no longer wanted in Africa. They are doing their best to come back, though. You may wonder at France's audacity in light of this, but the country has formulated a 10-year strategy to retake the continent. France's aspirations are still lofty, even when African governments are hesitant to receive a single French official. In response, Traoré has given France a sobering reality check. But since their proposal seems unworkable, it is still unclear exactly what France hopes to achieve. Does this mean that France's real intention is to revoke the anger Africans have towards the West already? Let's investigate. French President Emmanuel Macron reportedly said that he had asked French Defense Minister Sébastien Lekonu and the Joint Chief of Staff to reconsider the entire military presence in Africa by the next autumn, emphasizing that it was a strategic necessity. He pointed out that the need for this reevaluation was to ensure deployments that were less entrenched and less exposed, with the aim of building a lasting and closer cooperation with African armies and to rebuild training capabilities in various locations. Former French Army Chief of Staff, Mr. General Francois Le Cointre, recently made news for his bold suggestion of a renewed European commitment to Africa.
What is our common destiny as Europeans in the Mediterranean and Africa, where our fate hangs in the balance? We, the French, have continuously endeavored to instill in Europeans an awareness of the imperative to collectively act in Africa and the Mediterranean. I am deeply saddened by the failure of our commitments to the Sahel. In any case, we must question ourselves because we cannot fathom the prospect of an entire continent on our doorstep sinking into governmental and state apparatus destruction, descending into various forms of chaos and civil war across many countries, and grappling with escalating challenges induced by climate change, which disproportionately affect vulnerable populations like those in Africa. Furthermore, we must consider the looming demographic explosion that Africa will undergo, unlike any other continent before. To imagine that this will unfold in the next 10 to 20 years without repercussions for Europe, as if we inhabit a protective bubble, is simply unconscious. Thus, I believe that this shared interest should compel Europe at some point to act as a unified political entity capable of safeguarding its own interests, even if it means deploying its military forces. The withdrawal from the Sahel was a bitter pill to swallow for all those who were invested. I myself struggle greatly with this decision. It represents a failure on the part of France, Europe and Africa, stemming primarily from our failure to recognize that effective action must be comprehensive and coordinated. Restoring governance, reviving administrations, and fostering development must occur simultaneously and in concert, or else we are destined to fail. This is precisely what transpired. What I find difficult to accept is when people attribute this failure solely to a military operation. The truth is that the military aspect was just one dimension of a multifaceted challenge. I am convinced that within a few years, whether it be in 10 years, fewer or more, we will be compelled to return and assist these African countries. China, Russia and Wagner will not offer sustainable solutions to the profound difficulties faced by these countries and their populations.
His 10-year plan for controlling Africa has sparked significant objections, particularly from countries that have successfully driven out foreign forces and asserted their sovereignty, such as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Chad. What is the 10-year plan outlined by General La Cointre, and why has it caused so much controversy? A deliberate reinvasion of Africa, with a particular emphasis on the Sahel region, is part of General Francois Le Cointre's 10-year strategy. According to this plan, European military might intervene in the name of fighting terrorism and bringing stability to the area. Critics counter that this proposal is merely a veiled attempt to regain control over vital sites and abundant resources in Africa. The approach fails to recognize African nations' sovereignty and their ability to govern themselves. African leaders and populations are incensed at the hubris of believing that European involvement is either required or desirable. Lecointre's precise plan calls for setting up military outposts, sending European troops to secure strategic locations, and putting in place a government structure that purports to bring about peace. The plan describes a number of economic changes that will be overseen by specialists from Europe, concentrating on industries including infrastructure, agriculture, and mining. Despite their apparent benefits, these reforms are perceived as means by which European powers will maintain their hegemony over Africa's precious resources. Critics contend that the plan's training measures for local security personnel would essentially convert them into proxies representing European interests. This is seen by many African governments as a cover for more sinister geopolitical and economic goals. Because of its abundance in resources, including oil, uranium, and gold, the Sahel is a highly sought-after area for outside powers. The idea that the only way to resolve instability in the region is through European intervention ignores the ability and willingness of African countries to confront their problems. Furthermore, it disregards the background of foreign operations, escalating rather than settling disputes. Both citizens and African officials have sharply criticized Lecointre's proposal. They perceive it as an obvious attempt to subvert their independence and sovereignty. Since colonial exploitation is still very much in the past, any talk of reinvasion is met with fierce opposition. The plan's underlying conceit, which assumes that African countries are incapable of governing themselves and require European supervision, is incredibly offensive. Africa's nations now feel more united and resistant as a result of this, committed to defending their hard-earned independence. Lecointre's idea has ramifications that go beyond the immediate security and political issues. It poses a threat to further destabilize the area, since any foreign involvement is probably going to spark opposition from the local populace and possibly strengthen support for extremist organizations. The planned reforms are expected to have substantial economic implications as well, as there are concerns that they will enhance resource exploitation and benefit European firms at the expense of local economies. This might make poverty and inequality worse, resulting in more instability. Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore has voiced his opposition to this proposition loudly.
Start preparing for the war of high intensity. I hope I make myself understood. It's not just terrorism. Open your eyes. It's much more than that. It's a war of decolonization. And you must have heard these last days, some other generals who made us understand that if they fail to come with their armies to recolonize us, they have to come. Well, prepare for the war of high intensity. Either they will come themselves, or they will go through their local valets who are here to try to disturb our peace. So whoever, I say whoever, whether it's terrorism or any other army that must come to disturb our peace, we must prepare to welcome them in the long term and intensely. That's why I tell you, prepare for the war of high intensity. And we will follow these trainings. We will move on to other groups to intensify the operations and try to pacify. These are the steps. And this terrorism will be defeated because they know that it will be defeated, that they are preparing either at the local level here or to come with their armies to fight us. Well, we will prepare to welcome them. Thank you very much for all the work, everything that could be improved regarding the fighting conditions first, but also the working conditions. We will make an effort. More than ever now, you are one with the population. This is all we are looking for, the armed nations. Continue to keep this flame of unity with the civilian population so that they can support you. Because it is thanks to them that we can fight today. It is the people who understood. If the people had not understood, we would not be able to equip you like this. It is not possible. But the people understood, they committed themselves, and we are making a lot of effort so that the operational capacity only increases.
His answer demonstrates the tenacity and resolve of African countries to uphold their independence. What does serious divergence imply to you? All right, all you have to do is consider the history of coups in this nation. Naturally, we also know that France and her allies in the West have loudly denounced these coups. Additionally, if you even consider the coups, the immediate security strategy or approach is to unite with Russia, a different player and favored ally. It is, therefore, completely implausible that France would wish to cooperate with the Russian government that uses mercenaries from Russia, or even work directly with this government, given the current state of affairs regarding the war in Ukraine and the deep-seated grievances between the West and Russia. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa, but dropping a comment in the comments section below. Like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's continue. In a forceful response to General La Cointre's plan, President Ibrahim Traore emphasized that Burkina Faso and other African countries must get ready for a high-intensity decolonization battle. Traore's point is evident. The battle is not only against terrorism, but also against any effort by foreign powers to regain their dominance. He has urged his people to put aside their differences and concentrate on the external dangers posed by prospective recolonization attempts. He has also appealed for unity among his people. The significance of alertness, readiness, and strategic planning in protecting their sovereignty is emphasized in Traore's address. President Traoré presented the country with a detailed plan of action to thwart the planned reinvasion. He placed a strong emphasis on equipping the armed forces with better gear, better training, and the cultivation of a sense of duty and patriotism among the soldiers. Traoré also emphasized the value of economic resiliency, emphasizing the need to diversify the economy and lessening reliance on investments and subsidies from elsewhere. The goal of this strategy is to create an independent country that can withstand outside influences. The scope of Traoré's call to action goes beyond the political and commercial domains. He has exhorted his people to cultivate a sense of alertness and patriotism. This entails spreading knowledge and understanding of colonialism's historical background, as well as the current dangers to national sovereignty. According to Traoré, sustained resistance requires a united and informed public. Additionally, he has emphasized the importance of regional relationships and urged surrounding nations to present a unified front against any foreign meddling. The president's speech struck a profound chord, not only in Burkina Faso, but also elsewhere. His appeal for endurance and solidarity has given the populace a newfound sense of direction. Civil society organizations and grassroots movements have united in support of Traoré, coordinating programs and campaigns to aid the government in its endeavors. This group's mobilization is a part of a larger movement throughout the continent to reclaim their own destiny and fight against outside intervention. Traoré's answer has a diplomatic element as well. It has contacted groups and allies around the world to ask for support for Burkina Faso's independence and sovereignty. Traoré wants to refute the idea that foreign intervention is advantageous or required by assembling a coalition of allying nations and using global forums. This diplomatic endeavor emphasizes how crucial international cooperation is in the struggle against recolonization. The president's emphasis on maintaining internal cohesion is especially noteworthy. He has advocated for the settlement of internal disputes and rifts, understanding that a country that is shattered is more susceptible to outside threats. The administration of Traoré is attempting to resolve resentments and foster social harmony, making certain that every person feels involved in the country's quest for freedom. This method of resistance emphasizes how military, economic, social, and diplomatic tactics are all intertwined when it comes to preserving sovereignty. President Traoré's appeal to action is strongly felt both inside and outside of Burkina Faso. It draws attention to a larger movement across the continent to reclaim their destinies and fend against outside influence. Now, notwithstanding Traoré's criticism, what tactics does Burkina Faso use to guarantee a long-lasting opposition against recolonization? The administration of President Traoré is concentrating on a number of important tactics to guarantee long-lasting resistance. First and foremost, they are fortifying the armed forces by improving training initiatives, modernizing gear, and instilling a sense of responsibility and patriotism among the soldiers. Traoré also emphasized the value of economic resiliency, emphasizing the need to diversify the economy, and lessening reliance on investments and foreign aid that have conditions attached. The goal of this strategy is to create an independent country that can withstand outside influences. The military plan calls for extensive changes to create a strong defense. This entails updating intelligence capabilities, strengthening logistical support, and modernizing equipment. Burkina Faso wants to efficiently respond to security challenges and dissuade any prospective aggressors by building a well-trained and equipped military. To ensure a coordinated response to any foreign threats, the administration is also promoting alliances with neighboring nations to establish a regional security network. Another pillar of Traoré's approach is economic resiliency. To lessen reliance on foreign investments, the government is making investments in important industries, including manufacturing, mining, and agriculture. Through encouraging entrepreneurship and growing regional industries, Burkina Faso wants to develop an economy that is resilient to outside shocks. The administration is also concentrating on enhancing the energy and transportation infrastructure to boost economic development and raise the standard of living for its people. An essential component of the resistance strategy is social cohesiveness. The administration of Traoré is attempting to resolve internal disputes and foster harmony between various social and ethnic groupings. This entails putting into practice laws that guarantee the fair allocation of opportunities and resources, encouraging communication and peacemaking, and advocating for inclusive governance. Burkina Faso wants to establish long-term stability and a robust internal defense against external threats by forging a unified society. Another essential component of the resistance strategy is awareness and education. The goal of government education spending is to create knowledgeable and capable citizens. This entails modifying curricula to incorporate lessons on the significance of sovereignty and the history of colonialism, as well as fostering civic engagement and critical thinking. Through instilling a sense of patriotism and duty, the government hopes to develop a populace that is watchful and dedicated to maintaining its independence. Burkina Faso is forging closer diplomatic ties with other nations in an attempt to win support for its resistance and sovereignty movements. Traoré is actively interacting with the UN, African Union, and other international organizations to draw attention to the dangers of recolonization and to ask for help and support. Burkina Faso seeks to maintain a just and fair international order by assembling a coalition of friendly countries in order to offset the dominance of former colonial powers. Why has France created a new plan? Even though we are aware that the African countries have bravely rejected Western dominance, France just cannot allow the nations of Africa to stop being exploited by it. Economic reliance and strategic dominance have traditionally defined France's relationship with its former colonies, guaranteeing that French interests take precedence over African development. The removal of French troops from nations such as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Chad has dealt a serious blow to France's standing in the area. But there is still a desire to take advantage of Africa's strategic locations and abundant resources. Mr. General Francois Le Cointre is leading France's new plan, which is a desperate attempt to reclaim authority over its former colonies. The plan calls for a calculated retaliation under the guise of fighting terrorism and bringing stability to the area. through the use of European forces, the construction of military installations, and the execution of economic reforms overseen by European specialists. France wants to take back control and regain access to important resources including oil, uranium, and gold. This tactic shows a move toward more complex control techniques that make use of both military and financial might to restore authority. But it's evident from President Ibrahim Traoré's firm reply that France's goals will encounter strong opposition. Any attempts at recolonization will encounter strong resistance, as indicated by Traoré's emphasis on preparing for a high-intensity battle of decolonization and his demand for solidarity among African nations. Given the fierce opposition France's plan is sure to encounter, African governments and citizens alike are resolute to defend their independence and sovereignty. Given that genuine African leaders will not welcome their intervention, what can France do at this point? France is at a crossroads as true African leaders, such as President Ibrahim Traoré, vehemently oppose any idea of recolonization. There are few options available to France, and each carries a high danger of negative consequences. According to experts, France might use financial incentives or force to regain control in this situation. But under these circumstances, any leader who would embrace France is likely to be seen as either a traitor or is under pressure from France. What consequences would France face, and where might it gain acceptance? If other countries agree with its interests, France might provide significant investment packages and economic assistance. This could include incentives for development, educational initiatives, and infrastructure improvements. These financial incentives do, however, have conditions attached, which frequently result in a loss of sovereignty and an increase in economic dependency. Offering debt relief or advantageous loan conditions is a further strategy. These proposals may be alluring to nations dealing with economic volatility, but in the long run, they may have negative effects on national policy and stronger economic relationships. France may potentially think about going it alone in a military action, claiming it is fighting terrorism or preserving regional security. This strategy is risky, since local governments and citizens are likely to oppose it strongly, possibly resulting in protracted disputes. Supporting opposition groups or local militias to topple regimes that oppose French influence is another strategy. The goal of this tactic is to provoke chaos so that intervention can be justified later on. On the other hand, it may result in serious humanitarian emergencies and additional regional instability. Not only that, but France might exert diplomatic pressure on African countries by using its connections inside the European Union, NATO, and other international organizations. This could entail advocating for international resolutions that support intervention or arguing for penalties against non-compliant states. Alternatively, it can step up its soft power initiatives, supporting media campaigns, educational initiatives, and cultural exchanges in an attempt to influence African public opinion. Although less forceful, this strategy takes longer to produce noticeable outcomes. That might not be enough to quell fervent anti-colonial feelings. It might look for and assist leaders who are prepared to stand in for French interests. Political scheming or direct election process manipulation could be used to install these leaders. These leaders might, however, encounter strong resistance from their populace and find it difficult to retain their legitimacy. Leaders may occasionally be forced into coalitions by threats or financial pressure. This strategy is fundamentally unsustainable, since it depends more on force and fear than on sincere cooperation. Analysts contend that any leader who extends a warm welcome to France in these circumstances is likely to be perceived as a puppet or as being coerced into cooperating. This view may cause internal dissatisfaction, which could undermine the leader's authority and ultimately result in their resignation. It would be impossible for such leaders to rule effectively because people would always be doubting their legitimacy. In nations that are going through serious political unrest or economic crisis, where the pressing need for assistance and support may take precedence over long-term concerns about independence and sovereignty, France may find favor. Countries that are highly dependent to France or have weaker leadership structures may also be more receptive to such approaches. But given that actual independence and self-determination are becoming more and more popular in Africa, acceptance in these situations would probably be shaky and fleeting. Ultimately, African nations' resistance has been rekindled by General La Cointre's demand for a renewed European commitment to Africa. Africa still has a long way to go in its independence struggle. Determination, strategic planning, and the combined efforts of the diaspora and those on the ground are necessary. Burkina Faso and its allies' will to overcome these obstacles is a ray of hope for an Africa freed from the legacy of colonialism and able to stand strong and independent in the future. Do you think any African country will accept the comeback of France? What is France coming to do in these countries? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.